Welcome in, everybody. It is Tuesday, December 3rd. Indiana's 2024 regular season is officially in the books. The Hoosiers go 11-1 on the season with a thrashing of Purdue 66 to nothing in a very snowy game at Memorial Stadium. Uh, Dominant probably isn't even the right word for this one. Indiana just poured it on, never stopped pouring it on, and the Hoosiers walk away with their biggest victory in bucket history. Bring back the bucket back to Bloomington for the first time since 2019, and it was by all measures it was the perfect way kind of for Indiana to close out what has been a historic season. Matt Weaver is here with me from Peegs.com to break it all down, and we'll talk obviously a lot more about what's to come in the next few days and weeks with the portal, National Signing Day. Obviously, the college football playoff is also looming in the distance. So we'll break that all down. But first, Matt, Purdue. This was I know a lot of fans at the beginning were a little bit, hesitant in this game because Indiana, obviously they had a punt on their first drive, and it looked like Purdue was, might be a little bit feisty in this game, and then Indiana just never, was not willing to let Purdue do anything in this one.
Yeah, it was like you said, complete domination. A thing that as I went back and looked at the stats, it didn't even dawn on me during the game. James Carpenter, the defensive tackle, had more yards rushing on that fake punt than Purdue did as a team. He had 18. He rushed for 18 yards on that fake punt, and they had 13. It's just incredible. I don't think I've ever seen a game where a team. I mean, Western Illinois had more yards
Yeah.
when Indiana played them. I think they went a little bit over. It wasn't much more, but I think they were a little bit over 100. I don't think I've ever seen a game where you have two Power Four, teams, Power Five back in the day, that one of them only had 67 yards of offense. I mean, it was as good as Indiana's offense was. Their defense just completely dominated Purdue in all facets. I mean, they could do nothing. I think they got past midfield maybe one time the
Hmm.
entire game. It was and I think we both thought it would be a sizable, a convincing win. I honestly didn't see this coming, and I don't know if it mattered or not, but I think this was the absolute final nail in the coffin, obviously for Ryan Walters, because that team I think when it got to 21-0, I think Purdue quit. I think that's about the time they quit. And then after that, Indiana, they could have done whatever. We probably could have gone out there and scored if we wanted to. It was, they were not, they rolled over. Let's just be honest. They completely rolled over, but Indiana played well too. That was a big reason why Indiana played a really good game. And they did what you're supposed to do to a bad team. You hammer them.
Yeah. Yeah, I had one of my friends, he went to Purdue. He literally texted me. He's like, "I hope you guys blow them out so they get rid of Walters." And we obviously we don't know if that ended up being the reason why he ultimately got canned, which in my opinion he should have got canned. Well, the decision probably should have been made a while ago.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have hinged on whether this game was close or not. But regardless, Indiana, yeah, just super, super impressive. I mean, you hold Purdue to 54 passing yards between Hudson Card and Ryan Brown, 13 yards on 24 carries in the rushing game. I mean, it's just so impressive. And I know a lot of people are, mostly outside of the fan base, they're saying, Indiana ran up the score, stuff like that. You know, this was for as much as Indiana, needed style points. I also think Indiana just needed a lot of confidence going into the CFP after what happened against Michigan, what happened against Ohio State, and especially in our live game chat on Discord, especially in that first quarter where Indiana struggled a little bit on offense to really get going. People were like, we should just run the ball. It's a snowy game. Why are we throwing the ball? And I was like, no, listen, Indiana has to establish the pass game here because they didn't pass the ball well against Ohio State, didn't pass against well against Michigan. You have to get the passing game going. And Curtis Rourke, 23 completions on 31 attempts, 349 yards, tied the single game record for passing touchdowns with six. What was it? Five different guys caught touchdown passes. That was my biggest thing coming out of this because I didn't have any concerns that Indiana was going to lose this game, but I really just wanted to see the pass game going, especially going into the college football playoff. And that was just really encouraging to see Curtis Rourke finally get back to what we saw in the first 2/3 of the season.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing, obviously, they're not going to play for a couple of weeks, but you're going to be playing, and there's a chance that you could be playing. I mean, let's say you have to go to Ohio State again, or you have to go to Notre Dame during for a playoff game. You're going to be playing in these kind of conditions. Now you can obviously practice outside for a couple of weeks, but and I get Purdue's defense is nowhere near what you're going to face in the playoff, not even close. But the bottom line is they were game conditions. You were out there running plays, and for Curtis Shork, I mean, again, he's from Canada, so I'm sure the weather wasn't big bother for him. But you have some guys who maybe aren't as used to this kind of weather, came from other places, um, and just playing in that weather, getting used to it, it's different than practice. So yeah, to me, and listen, as far as running the score up, I've been in previous years, so I had no problem with what Signetti did.
Especially, I think the one that people want to harp on a little bit is that punt, that fake punt to James Carpenter. First of all, good on IU for getting James Carpenter involved because that
Yeah.
dude has worked his tail off this year, especially in the middle of the defense. In the defensive tackles don't get a whole lot of stats just the nature of their position. So good on IU for finding a way to get him the ball and give him that moment. I saw this on Twitter too because I had posted the video and someone had quote retweeted and said, people think it's run up. A lot of it too, I think, was Signetti wanting to put that on film, put that on tape. That hey, we do have a fake punt in our bag that we can pull out. So whoever their opponent is in the CFP has to worry about that too. So I think it was really smart for IU, first of all, to pull that out and show that they have that, they're capable of doing that, and then also the passing game, throwing in a couple like new wrinkles and stuff. And I know Purdue's defense is not good, but just putting more stuff on tape that opponents have to worry about because it's whoever they play in the CFP, it's going to be significantly more challenging than what Purdue was. So it's you can't fault Indiana for what they did in this game. And what was it? I think it was like the 10-minute mark before they put in their second team. And I know people were like, hope the starters don't get injured. Let's get them out of the game. Well, I mean, Kurt Signetti wasn't. I mean, we both knew. You said this, Matt. Like at the beginning of the year, you're like, you thought Signetti was going to come in here and try to hang 70 on Purdue, and he basically did that.
And they quite honestly they should have. I mean, they only had 7 points in the first quarter, and you mentioned it. They got off to a little bit of a slow start. Had the missed field goal. I think they had a punt early on. I mean, they were a couple plays. They were a couple plays away on a couple of those first drives of getting to 70 or more. So yeah, I mean, I had no problem with it. I mean, and I had no problem with Ohio State scoring late on Indiana. Just like I don't know, everybody saw Mike Locksley was pissed at James Franklin because they scored late. Listen, and James Franklin said it in today. It's not just about in today's thing. It's not just about wins. You've got to win and look good doing it. And people can say, well, you could have stopped at 52 or whatever. Well, maybe, but Indiana, the other thing is Purdue turned the ball over like twice, late in that game, deep in their territory. I mean, and they had the last touchdown was scored by Taven Jackson. What are you supposed to tell guys do? Don't play football. I mean, James Franklin said, he goes, I put in my 3s and 4s. He said they've earned the right to play football, and I agree with them. If you don't want them to score, then stop them. It's your fault. It's on you if you're not stopping them. I mean, this is big time. This is big boy football, and if you can't handle it, then you shouldn't be out there.
Defensively, the star of that game, and he obviously Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week, Jalen Walker. What a way for him to go out on his senior day. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. He'll probably, if he doesn't, he'll definitely be an undrafted free agent type guy, one of the priority guys. But 5 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups. He had an interception as well. I mean, he playing alongside Aiden Fisher. Fisher obviously has a huge edge in the tackles department as he has all season, but Jalen Walker, he has been phenomenal, and in this game it was really good to see him as well get going, and that can only be a confidence boost too for him going into the college football playoff.
Yeah, he was terrific. I knew he was in the backfield. I did not realize he had 4 tackles for loss. But yeah, he had a great game. That interception was fantastic. It showed, his. I mean, honestly, his athleticism. I mean, he kind of tipped that ball up to himself one-handed. And they struggled to block not just him, but all the guys. Purdue did, Indiana's guys all night. But yeah, he was terrific, and it was kind of cool that at least the last regular season game of the year, Indiana sweeps the weekly the offensive and defensive player. I know we're going to talk about offense, but Curtis Ward gets on offense and Jalen Walker, and I mean you saw him after the game. I mean he's just he's a good dude. I mean we don't get to know him as much as maybe it's because we don't run around him as much, but you can see it. He just loves playing football, and he had a great game. And like you said, in his final game, at least possibly final game in Memorial Stadium. Maybe the Indiana can host a game. We'll see on that, but what a way to go out! Just a terrific game, and he played awesome, as did the whole defense.
Yeah. And you could honestly make a case that Indiana could have had two or three Big Ten Player of the Weeks with if you want to throw Elijah Surratt in there. I don't know if they've ever done that, have two of the same player, but I mean him and Rourke were just connecting all game. And Rourke, this was his third Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week award, one shy of Anthony Thompson's single season record. He had four. Anthony Thompson did in 1989. Good for Curtis Rourke as well. And Elijah Surratt, it felt like both of those touchdowns he had were just broken plays, and he just made something out of nothing. And he was a guy that was quiet in the Ohio State game, quiet in the Michigan game. So it was also very good to see him get going, especially with Curtis Rourke, trying to come back from that injury that he had. So just really good all around from the whole offense.
Yeah, Surratt was awesome, and that long touchdown. Uh, I had my boys with me in the press box, and I told them that's the kind of stuff they work on in practice, where it's kind of a scramble drill. You could tell the route he run, and he broke it off and when he saw Curtis Rourke break away, and then he went down the field. And that's the kind of stuff they work on. I mean, they probably work on that in the summertime, when the coaches aren't around, and obviously that's stuff they work on in practice. But just a terrific game, and I mean, that was a great throw. Another guy, maybe you're gonna bring him up, Zach Horton. That touchdown. Watching from the press box, it wasn't as impressive as when I watched the replay of it. Because the way our angles, but when you see it from like the end zone and you see him, dive down, and what a great throw from Rourke on the run. I mean, absolutely perfect throw. It was just, and like I said, people were, well, it's the opponent. I get it. The bottom line is, they beat Purdue like they were an FCS team. And the team, and they really needed this, like you said, you needed that confidence, that boost going into, it's going to be a couple weeks off going into this dead time. When I say dead time, not playing games, they'll be practicing and doing stuff like that, but not playing for a few weeks, and to have that, coming out of this the regular season was big for this team.
A couple other notes coming out of this game. Justice Ellison, Tyson Lawton each had a rushing touchdown, so they become the first Indiana running back duo in a season to both have 10 plus rushing touchdowns, which that was something that Signetti talked about in the offseason. We weren't sure how it was going to play out, in the committee the committee approach to the running back, but those two have really come on strong. They basically split carries evenly all season, so good to see for those two guys. Jameer Johnson was out with an unspecified injury, which allowed Jamari Sharp to step into the starting lineup. He played pretty well. He had a fumble recovery, so that was good to see. Let's see. And then obviously Taven Jackson came into the game for fourth quarter. They didn't let him throw the ball, but he did have 3 carries for 20 yards, showed off that athleticism that we've seen this year, and had a rushing touchdown. So anything from that, Matt, stand out to you?
No, I think if I remember right, I don't have it in front of me, but I think Jamari graded, and like I said, take it for what it's worth, graded pretty well in PFF, and really for a guy, he's been thrown in there a few times. What game was it? The game where was it the Washington game where Pons, or the game before that where Pons was ejected? It was UCLA. Or he played, and then he started the first half of the next game, and he's done a nice job. I mean, he's one of the top guys on the team in pass breakups, even though his playing time's been kind of limited. And he's a guy that hopefully you can keep him around going forward. And I say that just because you got your corners back, and he's not played a ton. And I'm not saying that he's going to go in the portal, but he would be a guy that when you look at the roster, like hopefully they can keep him because he's done a nice job. But yeah, he played well. And then Taven showed his speed. I was he almost ran into me and my boys because we were standing right down there in the corner of that end zone, and it was pretty cool for them because he was right in front of us. But yeah, you could see it, like for a second, you're like, I don't know if he's going to make it, and then boom, he just comes around the corner and beats him to the pylon, and it was a great run, and it shows what he can do. And it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, we'll get into portal stuff later on. We expect him to look at a quarterback from the portal, but I think Taven has a chance to win this job next year and be the guy. He's got all the talent. It's just getting all the mental stuff down and getting more consistent. But it was cool to see that backup, the second, third team guys on offense get in the end zone.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite moments from that game. I was also down in the field. I think it was late in the fourth quarter. Bryson Bonds had an interception as well. And him and the second team defense were going crazy. So just guys like that, especially Bryson Bonds, because he's been in the program for what feels like forever now. Hasn't really played a whole ton this year. Didn't really play a whole ton really previous seasons either. So just another guy that it's really nice to see him get his moment there in what has been a spectacular season for Indiana. Uh, but Indiana now, Matt, 11-1. They did what they needed to do against Purdue. I mean, it doesn't get more style points-esque than a 66 to nothing blowout win. So, I've thought this for weeks now, but this really just solidified it. I think for a lot of fans, that Indiana is going to the college football playoff. Obviously tonight we're recording on Tuesday afternoon, so we'll see tonight where they fall, and then Sunday will be selection day for the CFP. Matt, right now a lot of the projections have them either traveling to Georgia or there's been some Penn State chatter projections. There's been some Tennessee projections. I think there was one Notre Dame projection from the story I did. When you look at those teams, is there anyone that if you're Indiana, you would prefer to go play, just in terms of location, style of play, caliber opponent, stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I think obviously Tennessee's as far as distance is closer than the other two. Um, Georgia's not terrible. I mean, even if you're driving, it's not a terrible drive. It's a little bit of a drive. I mean, Penn State, distance wise, might be about the same as going down to Georgia, but it's a little bit more difficult. I've done it before, and this time of year, going up in the mountains in late December, you probably it could be a little bit treacherous with weather. All three would be tough games. I don't. As far as I probably haven't done enough to say who they match up the best with or whatever. I mean, you play Tennessee and Georgia, you're going to get that SEC speed. Penn State's obviously going to have some speed too. So, it would be. I think the Penn State game would obviously have a ton of storylines because with Tom Allen being the defensive coordinator there. That could be a ton of storylines. But I think you know all three would be interesting matchups. I mean, if you ask me, I would probably. And you mentioned Notre Dame. That would be another one. I think Notre Dame's a good team. That might be, and it would still be a tough game. That might be the best matchup. But it would still be a tough game. And also, it would be all distance wise the closest game to go to going up to South Bend. So, if I had to pick, I'd pick South Bend or Knoxville because it's not as far to travel. But it's just get in the like I said before, just get in the playoff and take your best shot and see what happens.
Yeah. So, I know one of the big things for Indiana right now is to see, if they're going to play at home, play on the road. Indiana would have to have a lot go right for it during this championship week for them to. I think they would have to leapfrog. I think it would be three spots up the rankings because they're currently last week they were at 10, but they got pushed down a seed line to 11, so they would have to go up to be ranked number 7 to be seeded number 8 for a home game. So for that to happen, obviously Notre Dame is idle this week because they are too good to play in a conference, I guess. So they're not going to drop. Notre Dame won't. SMU is obviously right there as well, but they're also slated for a road game. But I guess if they win the ACC title game, they would be that 4 seed spot. So there's a lot of interesting things to shake out here. The Ohio State game, Matt, we do need to talk about that because for a second there, uh, you know, there was a decent chance that Indiana could have been going to the Big Ten title game after Ohio State lost, and then Penn State, at least early in that Maryland game, Penn State didn't look too great, and obviously they pulled away. But Ohio State losing, man, that does a lot, and I don't know if that's going to be enough to push Indiana up the bracket. But that was, that game in general just was so shocking, and I couldn't believe when the line came out. It was minus 20 for Ohio State over Michigan, because those games are always kind of weird, and Michigan had something to prove there. Did you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I got to watch a little bit of it, and saw pretty much most of the second half. And I just, not to pile on because Ryan Day's taking right now and Chip Kelly, but I didn't understand at all their game plan. It's almost like they were trying to win in spite of. I mean, Michigan's strength is in between the tackles with that D line, and they just kept running up the middle. And you've got all these weapons. I mean, I don't know how you don't. Is it Jeremiah Smith? I don't know how you don't throw the ball to him 10 times a game. I really don't. I don't know how you don't throw. I mean, as a true freshman, he might be the best receiver in college football. Like if he could go in the draft, he's probably a first round pick. He's so unbelievably talented, and they just I didn't understand their game plan. It's almost like they were trying to prove that they could be tough and physical, and it blew up in their face. It just did not make any sense to me at all. And Will Howard, I've kind of said it all year. I think he's a good player. He's just not that dynamic guy they've had before at that position. And like I said, he played well. He played great against Indiana. Played well most of the year. but he had a bad game, and it was the wrong day to have a bad game. I mean, that's a killer loss. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I think it's fair to say that if they don't win the national title, Ryan Day could be in big trouble. I mean, because you can't lose 4 in a row, and when you're a 20-point favorite at home to your arch rival, and they had to scratch and claw just to get bowl eligibility, and they beat you. That's as bad of a loss as I've seen in that series in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it really felt like Ohio State kind of overlooked Michigan, which is kind of wild to say, just based on how the season's gone. So that'll be interesting to see how the Ohio State situation, shakes out here. And this is kind of a tangent, but one thing I was, I was talking to this with my friends is like, if you do move on from Ryan Day, who do you get? Like, I don't really, is there anybody out there that's demonstrably better than Ryan Day who can handle a program like Ohio State? The one guy I had in mind was maybe Brian Kelly, because he's had a lot of success in the Midwest at Notre Dame and in Cincinnati, but he also isn't exactly lighting the world on fire at LSU. So even if they do move on from Day, I don't know who you go and get unless it's some guy from the NFL maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if you had asked me a year or two ago, I would have said Fickle, but obviously it's not gone great at Wisconsin. But he sure did look like, and I know that, he was the interim coach when they had all that trouble with Tressel, and then they moved on, but that was a tough situation. The guy I would say now, you mentioned NFL guy. I think he can handle all the stuff that goes right. My question would be, can you do the portal and the NIL? Because he hasn't been doing. Mike Vrabel's a heck of a coach. I know he got let go in Tennessee, but Mike Vrabel's a really good coach. I mean, he's going to get an NFL job. In fact, he's probably going to be the number one guy for a lot of teams when they start the season ends in the NFL. I think he could handle all the noise, all that. He played there. He's been in the NFL. Now Tennessee's, not a huge market, Nashville, but he's been in the NFL. I mean, he played for the Patriots when they had those great teams. I think he can handle it. Just to me, could you handle the stuff that you have to do off the field, X's and O's, and getting guys to play? It's just, could you do the recruiting? Because it's a lot different. I mean, that it's brutal to deal with the portal and the NIL for some guys, but that's the one guy I think can handle it. It's just the other stuff. College football wise, I don't know. There's guys X's and O's wise I think could go in there and do well. I mean, but I'm not sure. I can't really think of anybody offhand that I would say is a slam dunk. There's nobody that to me that seems like a slam dunk. So while I understand, but man, it's Ryan Day. At some point, you gotta beat Michigan. You just got to 1-4 against Michigan. I think I saw it. He's 40-something-1 against everybody else, and in Michigan he's like 1-4. That's it's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah. And that's sort of the same argument too with James Franklin, right? Where, they beat everybody that they're supposed to, and then when it comes time for Penn State to play Ohio State, they can't beat Ohio State. But it's like, what do they win too much to move on from them, but they're not winning at a level which, for them is the national championship. So, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting situation there in Columbus, especially if because imagine if they get first rounded too. I mean, he might not even get on the plane home from wherever they're playing. So,
Yeah.
that will be very interesting to see play out this offseason because whatever happens there is going to have a lot of ripple effects throughout the Big Ten. So, all right, Matt, let's move on. There's a couple things we want to get to. Tomorrow is a national signing day, the early signing period, but you expect most of these guys, if not all of them, to sign tomorrow. Just a quick rundown, Matt. Like, who are the guys you like in this class? Anybody who you think could play right away? Just give us a general overview of what to expect for tomorrow on signing day.
Yeah, I mean they've got 22, commits. Bryce Taylor, the kicker from Bloomington South, I think will be a preferred walk on. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure he'll actually be signing like any kind of scholarship papers. But the 21 guys, it's a solid class. I mean, basically all these guys were committed, prior to the season. I don't think. I mean, Byron Baldwin, recommitted. He decommitted and then recommitted in November. Tyrone Burris was another guy that committed in November, but they had him on campus, and he was supposed to commit to IU and then flipped at the very last minute to Louisville and then flipped back to Indiana. So it's as far as guys I like. I mean, what's interesting about this class, there's of the 22 guys, I'm going to count Taylor in the 22. 15 of them are enrolling in January, which is a huge number. And then, like, you take into account they're probably going to bring in at least that many portal guys, I would think, in January, if not more. You could have around 30 to 40, or I should say 30 to 35. Well, it could be 40 new guys on the roster. I mean, half the roster could flip over again. So, but I like offensively. I like LeBron Bond, the receiver out of Virginia. He's going to be an early enrollee. He's not real big, 5'9", about 160, 165 pounds, kind of in that Miles Price, Keyshawn Williams, kind of mold. Super dynamic. I mean, he's had 6 punt returns this year for his team. He's averaging 59 yards a punt return. He's taken 4 back for touchdowns. I mean, that's the kind of big playability that he has. Defensively, I won't name a bunch of guys. I'll go defensively. They need help at safety. I think Byron Baldwin getting him back was huge. I think I saw him play live at Center Grove. Center Grove's got a great program. Went to I think the semi-state this year. Didn't make it to state, and he was fantastic. And that team's loaded. That St. Francis Academy team is just, stacked. But he was a really good player. Tremendous speed and explosiveness. Comes down and hits you. Playing safety and DB is hard in college as a young guy, but I think he's got a chance to at least maybe get in there a little bit in the rotation. Remember, Amari Farrell played 2 years ago when he came in, played some. I think Baldwin can do the same. So those are a couple of guys. There's a bunch of guys I like, but I won't go through all of them. But those are the guys I like. Keontae Stewart on defense is another early enrollee that that I'm really high on. And I look at positions where you need help. You're going to need help at receiver. You're going to need help on the D line. You're going to need help, a little help at linebacker, and then safety is where you're going to need help. And Stewart is listed as a corner, but could be a safety. He's a really good looking player on the D line. You got Kyler Garcia, and Keyshawn Calhoun. Both those guys are going to be early enrollees, and they could factor in. So, it's a good solve. This is the kind of class. You're going to look at the rankings. Let me see what they are right now. 41 composite, 41. The Big Ten, I think they're probably around 10 to 12. But like I tell people, your ranking can change 5 or 6 spots by adding 1 or 2 guys. So you put all these teams and think it's about development, and this staff has shown they can develop guys. This is a good group. They got guys with length, with athleticism, good talented guys. Now it's up to the strength staff and the coaching staff to develop them and make them really good football players in the Big Ten.
And the staff, especially Signetti, has, they've shown a willingness to play young guys if they're ready, with Landino, obviously, Elijah Hardy. We even saw Quentin Clark get in the game a couple times this year. Charlie Becker, obviously, he was basically a special team guy, but he exceeded his red shirt. So, if the staff thinks they're ready to play, they'll play. Any under the radar guys, Matt, like dark horse guys that you think maybe not as a freshman or a sophomore, but later in their career, you think could have really nice careers here?
I talked about him before, and maybe I'm just getting too hyped up about it. So, but Baylor Wilkin, I really like him. The 2 tight ends, Andrew Barker and Blake Deary. Barker will be in January. He played up at Kokomo. His stats this year, I think he had like 13 catches for like 111 yards. I just did his stats. I could be off on his receptions. But they play like almost like a option or a wing T offense. He's basically asked to block. He got his offer after camping at IU in the summertime. So they saw him in person. In theory, he's a guy. He's a track guy up in Wisconsin. I think he wants to say he does the hurdles and long jump. I mean, I think these guys have a chance. Now at tight end, they're going to probably come in. I mean, Barker's 230. I think Theory's around the same size. They're going to have to get, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, Thiry. They're going to have to get bigger. He's like 215, 220, but their athleticism could really translate. I mean, they could, this is high comparison, but you can see a Zach Horton type in them a couple of years down the road. Get them in, redshirt them. Good thing is at tight end, you probably don't need to play them right away. There's some guys in front of them. But those are guys that I really like. Try to find somebody else here. Davion Chandler is a guy I love. I wish he was coming in January. He'll be a spring grad and a June addition to the program. But he killed it at IU in their 7-on-7 camp. Just really blew the staff away. 6 foot, 170, so he's got to get bigger. Same high school as Omar Cooper. but he's got a chance to be really good. It wouldn't shock me if Davion, even though it won't be here in the spring, gets his way in the mix in the fall camp. I think he's got that kind of ability. We'll see, but he's a guy that I really really like. So, like I said, they've got some good players. People go by the ratings. I get it. I go by what I hear from the coaches and their eye test. And these are guys, and Burris and Tristan Abram are two guys at defensive end. They won't be here until June, but they can get after the passer. And obviously, you're going to lose some of that with Linnell Cart you leaving, and the possibility of Kamara. He did go through senior day. I think he could be back, but maybe tries to go to the NFL, and you have to replace some of that production. So it's a good class, and I think this staff is the kind of staff to develop them.
Yeah, that's a good point here. I did want to pivot to that, Matt. The who's staying, who's going. We'll probably put out a longer story about that, in the next couple days. But with Indiana's current roster, because they're gonna have to fill a lot of holes here. And we can talk about the portal in just a second. But I think Kamara might be the biggest one. Uncertainty. I think you want to put Nick Kidwell in that category too. Of we just don't know if they're going to come back or not. Ultimately, both of them did go through senior day, so that's probably not too much of an indication because they probably still need to make a decision on whether they can stay or go. Uh, I think Kamara could get drafted if he goes right now, and I really don't see that high of a. I don't know how much higher he can climb with his draft stock just because he is undersized. And the season he had, I mean, he was one of the Big Ten's best pass rushers this year. So even if he did come back next year, I don't know how much higher he could climb. So I really would not be shocked at this point if he, decided to go to the draft. Like, you can't fault him for that either. And then, like I said, Kidwell is the one guy who, if he comes back for an eighth year, that would be phenomenal for Indiana's interior because you're going to lose Mike Kadick. You're going to lose Trey Wettig. So that would be nice for him if he's able to come back. Anybody else? I think those were the only two guys, right, who went through senior day who could still come back, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. One guy who didn't go through, and I had heard during the season, and this isn't an NFL guy necessarily, Mark Langston, the long snapper. But I heard that he's expected to be back. He missed the season before he came to IU at Georgia Southern with an injury, and somewhere else, I think he might have been injured. So it sounds like he could get another year and come back, which would be good. Long snappers, that's an important position. I agree with you on Kamara. I don't know that coming back does. I mean, I just looked his stats up. I mean, he's 10 sacks. He was tied for second in the Big Ten. Tackles for loss, he's second in the Big Ten with 15. I mean, I don't know. Every week in and week out, he was basically the highest graded guy by PFF. I don't know unless you just want to play another year of college football. I'm not sure you risk injury. And if they tell you, I mean, if you're a fourth round pick, no matter what, let's just throw it out there to say he's a fourth round pick, no matter what, it doesn't make sense to come back. If they say, hey, you can come back and maybe move up a couple rounds, then it might make sense. But he's kind of is what he is. He's a redshirt junior. He's not going to get longer. You know what I mean? He's not going to grow taller. It doesn't mean he can't play. It's just he is what he is physically. So, I don't begrudge a guy. Hey, if you can go pro and that's your dream, then go for it. And that's good for the program. I mean, there's a reason why Alabama and Ohio State and these schools keep getting great recruits every year because they get guys and they get them into the NFL within 3 to 4 years. So people want to go play there. So, you have to replace them obviously, and you probably have to do it in the portal, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But they've shown they've done it in the past, and I won't have any doubt that they'll do it again. So, but he's the only guy. And him and Kidwell are the only guys that I saw in the line down there that I thought could come back and might make sense to come back, who were going through senior day.
Let's talk about NFL draft, the guys that are draftable. I'm kind of curious what your take on it. How many guys get drafted, where they go. So let's do a quick rundown. So Curtis Rourke, obviously, he's going to be up there in the discussion. I wonder how much his mobility and his previous ACL injury is going to affect his stock. Because this year, he showed at times that he could, he has good escapability, but then he also showed at other moments, where he just the pocket complete collapsed and he got, just basically fell to the ground. So he's a guy that I'm curious about. The wide receivers, I keep going back and forth. I don't know if any of these receivers are draftable that are leaving this year. Um, like maybe a Miles Price as a slot guy, like a speed special teamer guy. I don't know about receiver. Tight end Zach Horton. I could see somebody taking a late round flyer on him. Just for his versatility, blocking ability. He's shown his he can make catches in space and stuff. And then on the offensive line, maybe Mike Haydick, maybe. But he's gonna have to show probably a lot during his pro day or if he goes to the combine. So who on offense, Matt, for you, do you think is the most draftable or guys who could at least get undrafted free agent signings?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rourke has worked himself into a draft pick. He's probably a day three pick. I mean, the games against Michigan and Ohio State probably didn't help him. Obviously didn't help him. But I still think he's a guy that you can be there in the day three, which I think day three is what, like 4 through 7, if I remember right, for the NFL draft. Um, you know, Out of the running backs, I don't think Lawton or Ellison get drafted. I mean, Ellison maybe could have a chance late. I think one or both could have a chance to be undrafted guys. The thing is, when you're playing that kind of position, you're not going to be a starter. Can you bring special teams value? I don't know on those guys. The one guy that I don't think he'll get drafted, but I think he will get a real good shot to get signed by somebody, and he has not played a ton this year. People might be surprised, is Anderson Kobe. And I say that because Anderson Kobe can really, really run. And if you notice, when he's played gunner on special teams, he's been down there a lot and he's been down there, made plays, made tackles. And his speed and that ability to play gunner somebody will take a flyer on him, in my opinion, as an undrafted guy, and put him on special teams. Now, whether he'll make the team, he'd be like a fifth or sixth receiver in the NFL. But he does have that speed and that special teams ability, especially at gunner, is so important. Price and Williams are smaller guys. I'd be interested to see I mean, at that size, they're going to have to run really well. And they're short shuttle. That's really because they're going to be slot guys in the NFL. They're short shuttle, and those kind of shuttles times are going to have to be really good. Cross is kind of in between. I'm not sure he's got the size to play outside in the NFL. But the NFL's changing. It's becoming more like the college game. So, it's possible. I would think I don't really see anybody drafted in their wide receiver room. Walker could have a chance. I'm sorry, not Walker, Horton. I was looking at Walker on my tight end list. Horton could have a chance because of what he can do. And tight ends anymore, they have that one that's kind of more like a big receiver, and then they have the one who's kind of an inline guy. The guy on the offensive line, if he has a chance, get drafted is Weddick. And I say that because he played so many different positions at Wisconsin. And that kind of versatility really, I mean, when in the NFL, a lot of times they'll keep like 8 guys on. You only have 53 roster spots, so you may keep 8 linemen. You need one of those guys to really be able to be a guy who can play multiple spots. Tackle and guard, maybe not center, but at least you can move around. And he's shown that he can do it. He even played some center at Wisconsin, so I think he's a guy. Kadick playing center, I think helps his chances. I think his size hurts him a little bit. I'm not sure how long his arms are, and if he can only play center in the NFL, that could make it tough on him. And centers usually need to also have some versatility at guard, but they do have some guys. James Evans hasn't had a great year. I think when they work him out, he'll probably punt well. I know we're talking about offense, but I'll swip over to defense real quick, special teams. James Evans, but the problem is that special teams guys there's no turnover. Those punters, they kick for like 15, 16 years. So, offensively, and I know I kind of jumped a punter, but those are the guys that kind of stand out for me. I mean, if I had to put an over under on the number of guys that get drafted on offense, I'd probably say 2 or 3. To me, I think Rourke, and then maybe one of the linemen. I don't know about the receivers, and then maybe Horton. To me, it would probably be 2 or 3 on offense.
And then defensively, we talked about Kamara. I really like CJ West. I think he could be just a big, really good with longevity nose tackle in the NFL. Just a guy that clogs up running lanes. I don't know how well he's going to test, but I mean, you just watch his film. I mean, he is so disruptive in the middle of the defensive line. So I think he might be a guy that could get a late round look, if not an undrafted look. Linnell Carr, maybe. I think he'd have to probably be an outside backer in the NFL. Linnell Carr would. Jacob Megan-Farrar, probably not. And then at linebacker, I'm really interested to see how teams will evaluate Jalen Walker because he is going to be, a freak on, when you get him on a pro day or in the combine. Like he's tested so well, and that was one of the things Signetti said in the offseason was he's probably the fastest guy on the team, and he has all the physical makeup. So I'll be curious to see where his draft stock ultimately falls after he goes through testing and stuff. And then at DB, the cornerbacks, you think most all of them are going to come back. Well, D'Angelo Pons does have to come back because obviously he's only a sophomore. Maybe Asbury or Terry Jones gets a look. Um, and then I think that's all of them. So anyone on defense, Matt, that you think could get a look?
Yeah, I think CJ Weston. I mean, I know the senior day Twitter thing has been really, they've been tweeting out stuff about him all year. So I won't be shocked if he doesn't get invited down there. And a lot of times guys who get invited there are usually considered draftable guys. He's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of defense he goes to. I think he's a guy that on early downs you could play him at the three tech if you play him next to a bigger D like a nose tackle, and then maybe on passing downs he slides over to the nose and gives you a little bit more of a pass rush from that spot. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but I think he definitely has a spot. Linnell Carr, I think, has the athleticism. The thing with him is, I think you're right. He might be better, and not a lot of teams are playing on how many teams are playing 3-4 in the NFL anymore, but more like a stand-up guy. And if you're playing that position, you may have to have some versatility on special teams. If you're kind of listed as a linebacker, because that's kind of the special teams position in the NFL. But yeah, I could see him. I'm not getting drafted, but I think a team could take a flyer on him because of his athleticism. To me, Jalen Walker reminds me a lot of Cam Jones. They're similar in size. They both can really run. They're athletic. And Cam Jones has carved out a career so far. It's only a couple years in, but he's playing on one of the best teams in the NFL on special teams for the Chiefs. And he's on their special teams, on their coverage team. So I can see Jalen Walker. I think Jalen Walker may be a little bit better instinctual than Cam Jones. And some of that is Cam Jones was really more, he was like a receiver. I mean, teams recruited him as a receiver out of high school, out of Memphis. And he's a good player. But I think Walker, size could hurt him a little bit, but his ability to run, and I would think he could be really good on special teams as well in the NFL. So I think he could be a guy that goes late in the draft. And then DB wise, I think these are probably more undrafted guys. Asbury, Jones, Sanguinetti's has not had. He's obviously kind of fallen off the map. I think teams will maybe, it'll be interesting at the pro day what they run, what they test. Because as far as the combine, I think Rourke probably has a chance to get invited. Maybe one of the linemen. I think West, and then Kamara if he goes pro, you got to think he's going to get invited. But other than that, I would, be interesting. I mean, Indiana, they could have maybe 4 guys at the combine, which for Indiana would be a pretty big number because it's been a while since they've had that many guys, if ever.
Yeah, it's been I was thinking too at DN, Matt. Can you remember the last time a DN got drafted from Indiana? Because right now I can't think of anybody, at least in recent memory. I know Ryder Anderson got a spot as a UDFA guy.
Yeah, an undrafted free agent. I mean, before that you'd have to go back. I can't remember on Middleton and when they had Middleton and Curlew and Bill, they had those good teams in the like 2006 or 7, whatever it was. That they had that team. But Curlew was kind of like a car, not as athletic, but he was kind of a tweener. Not quite a linebacker, too big almost to be a linebacker, but not quite big enough to be an edge guy. Middleton was a stud physically. He didn't bring it all the time. That guy had a chance to be, in my opinion, special, but unfortunately it didn't pan out for him. But yeah, I cannot remember a DN from Indiana. I'd have to go back and look that up. I can't remember a DN getting drafted. I mean, I'm assuming somewhere along the way somebody has, but nobody jumps out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's going to be a whole lot of group of guys here if they end up getting drafted. It'll probably be a first for Indiana in quite a while. I really, just selfishly, I really hope Zach Horton gets a chance in the NFL because that he's a guy that brings it every single game for Indiana, and he has meant so much to the team. So, and I just think his skill set is just so well versed for the sort of an NFL style scheme, and that he can play. He can line up out wide. He can line up tight. As a blocker. So, I hope he gets a chance in the NFL. So we'll see, obviously, what happens there. Okay, Matt. Last thing I want to talk about is the portal. Obviously, portal season is really heating up now. We're seeing guys go, by the dozen basically every minute into the portal. Indiana, so far, obviously the guys who left midseason are already in the portal, but we haven't heard anything about any other other transfers from Indiana. What are you hearing right now on the portal, guys they might be targeting or positions they might be targeting? Just anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, they're really it's they're probably gonna look at guys at almost every position. I mean, the biggest needs, defensively, they need to get some D linemen. You're gonna lose Carpenter, you're gonna lose West, you're gonna lose Carr, you could lose Kamara. So the need there, and that's both inside and outside, is going to be there. Linebacker, you're going to lose Walker. You've got some good ones, but I think, I mean, we've already, it was reported today by Brian Doan, one of our recruiting guys at 247, that Indiana's making a push for, and I'm going to, it's Makai. I don't know how to say his last name, Gibior from Nebraska, Gboyar. I probably butchered that bigger than life. But he started 11 games in Nebraska. They're pushing to try to get him on campus next week when you can start. Right now, it's a dead period, so nobody can do anything. But next week, you can start bringing guys on campus. But safeties are going to be a big position. I think I wouldn't be shocked to see him bring in a corner, but I don't think it's going to be. I think safety, you're going to have to bring in 2 to 3 guys. Obviously, a quarterback, wide receiver is another position of need. I think O line. We talked about this a little. I think O line is kind of a sneaky position of need. You should have Carter Smith back. Drew Evans once he gets back from the injury, and it was interesting hearing Signetti talk about how much he likes him. I can't remember what press conference it was. He talked about how much he liked him and how tough he was. So that tells me that they think he's going to be a guy. And then Bray Lynch, you got 3 guys back. We mentioned Kidwell as a possibility, and then you got a bunch of question marks. Vinny Fiacable has been at IU for 4 years, but not been on the field and was hurt this year. Cooper Jones switched over, so you're gonna have to get some. I think and I've said it before. You got some guys in the older class, and you're gonna have like a bunch of freshmen. You need to kind of fill in the middle. You need maybe like a redshirt sophomore or a true junior, somebody like that, to kind of fill in the middle. To give you to kind of balance these classes out a little bit, so they're not top and bottom heavy. But every position, wide receiver, or I'm sorry, running back, I can see a guy, tight end, a guy. Um, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see him get a punter. They lose in Evans, so it's almost every position on the roster. I think they'll take at least one guy, and then, like I said, safety, D line, O line, wide receiver are kind of the ones where you could see them really kind of try to take multiple guys. When I say multiple, I'm talking like more than 2, like 3 to 4 guys.
So the big one, obviously, that everyone's going to be looking at here is quarterback because Curtis Rourke is leaving, which leaves you with Taven Jackson, Tyler Cherry, Alberto Mendoza, and then obviously more guys are going to start trickling into the portal at the quarterback position. We both expect Indiana's going to go get a portal quarterback, and I know people are concerned that if Indiana goes and gets a portal quarterback, that pretty much signals that whoever they're getting is going to be their guy, which means Taven Jackson's not going to. Taven Jackson's going to get an opportunity to compete. Like he's going to be going into second year in the system. Like I don't have any worries that the staff is not going to give him a chance to win the starting job. But whoever they bring in from the portal at quarterback is the guy that they've kind of targeted as, we think he can lead this offense. So at quarterback, Matt, without getting, too specific with names and stuff, what do you think Indiana ultimately does there? Do they get a guy who's maybe on the same caliber as Taven, or do they get a guy who's super experienced like Rourke was, who can come in and lead day one? You think?
It'll be interesting. I mean, this doesn't mean much. We talked about this off the air before. Coach Signetti started following Miller Moss from USC. Miller Moss would be he's a 1-year guy, so it'd be like a Curtis Rourke, and it would kind of give you another kind of bridge guy. But there's also the argument, and this argument is, I'm with you. Taven will get a chance to compete, but if they go out and get a guy who's, let's say, in his class, or maybe even a year younger, like you go out and get like a red shirt sophomore, that's what Taven is, or a red shirt freshman who's played this year and been productive. To me, that says, okay, they like Taven, but maybe they're hedging their bets. If you go get a Miller Moss, it does delay Taven for 1 more year, assuming he wins the job. Like if you get a 1-year guy, I'm not really sure. I mean, I know this is kind of the generic, safe answer. They're going to try to get the best guy they can get. I mean, they're going to try to get a guy that they believe can come in here, and a lot of that's going to be, when they get a chance to sit down and talk to him. mentally? Do they feel like, and how he is? I mean, Curtis Rourke was perfect for this team for what Cincinnati's looking for. I mean, he was a low key guy. Obviously, he was very competitive, but he wasn't an up and down roller coaster emotional guy. So, you have to, it's hard. This is speed dating. I mean, you're trying to pick a spouse in like, a few days. It's speed dating on steroids. I mean, it's what it is, and it's tough. And you're gonna, I'm sure there's guys that can talk to it. Some of these programs, hey, what was this guy like? Or maybe somebody who recruited him or knows him. But that's the biggest thing. Is he going to fit the culture of the team? And then obviously the talent. I mean, they're going to find guys who have talent. So let's put that aside. Do they fit the culture? And do they have the mental capabilities to play in this offense and run the offense the way that Shanahan, Signetti, and Sinceri want it to be run? So I could see him going either way. I could see a 1 year guy, and I could see a guy who's got multiple years left. I wouldn't be shocked with either direction.
Yeah. And so the portal calendar is obviously weird. Well, not weird, but it's changed here this year with, grad transfers were allowed to enter mid-season, but guys who still have a couple of years eligibility, that they had to wait until I think they still have to wait till what, next week it is, right? Until they can start.
Yeah, the portal opens for most people now, like Purdue guys, for instance, West Virginia guys,
Yeah.
Central Florida guys, because there was a coaching change. They can go in immediately, regardless of whether you're a grad transfer or not. But yeah, the official, like you'll see guys say, I'm going in the portal. They're not officially in the portal until most of them until December 9th on Monday. So once Monday comes, it's going to be, I mean, best way to put it, all hell is going to break loose. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. I wonder how quickly Indiana acts on some of these guys too, because last year they brought in a ton of. It felt like that, the commits kind of came in waves where they got Rourke, they got Miles Cross, Miles Price, a couple of those guys. They got them like right away as soon as they came to Indiana, and then there was maybe like a week period where you waited, and then all those JMU guys came over after their bowl game, and then
Yeah.
obviously the spring. So I wonder how quickly Indiana wants to fill out their class, or if they're going to be more selective. In sort of the timing of everything.
I think they'll want to get some guys, but I do think they'll be selective because there's also going to be another portal, another little window, and they've had this last few years, like from like January 1st or 2nd to the 5th. So basically right before classes started. And I think they got a few guys. I have to go back and look because I was looking at my signing day preview from last year, and like Rourke was in it, Cross was in it, Keyshawn Williams, Justice Ellison. I think even Tyson Lawton. I think he might have came over even before all those other JMU guys. But yeah, there was a number of guys. I think Trey Weddick might have been in there. I'm trying to remember, but yeah. So it's different this year because and coaches wanted this. They wanted signing day's been moved up 2 weeks, which is weird. But I think they wanted to be able to just concentrate on the portal, not have to worry about portal and high school recruiting at the same time. But I think you will be selective, but you also wait because there could be after those bowl games. That's those January 1st to January 5th guys who maybe stay through the bowl game and then they go in. And I do think there is still going to be one in the spring. So we'll see how it works out. But yeah, I mean, if there's players you really like, you're not going to turn them down. You can't. It's what's the old saying, a bird in the hand. You're not going to turn them down if you get a good player. But if you're kind of so-so on a guy, you might wait and say, hey, we may think somebody may come, in early January or in the spring that we might like a little better. But it's tough. I mean, you gotta sometimes you gotta make tough decisions and say, you know what, we maybe we get somebody better, but we might not. We have to take this guy now. So it'll be interesting to see how many guys, like I said, are added to the high school group between December 9th and whenever the portal closes. Is it next month or the end of the month? Whatever it is, it'll be interesting to see how many portal guys are added. My guess is I'll be shocked if it's anything less than 15, but I could be wrong. I'll be shocked if it's anything. I can see them leaving a few spots open for spring, but we'll see.
Yeah. And also with the spring period too, right? Like two of Indiana's best players on defense this year came from the spring window with CJ West and D'Angelo Pond. So you definitely need to be, kind of keen on that while also realizing, you got to fill out the roster, make sure you got, the bulk of your group by spring ball. So, and then obviously you hope you don't enter spring ball with a situation like Indiana had last year with Philip Bleedy and somebody just up and leaves right before spring practice starts because that was not ideal for Indiana, but yeah, it should be very interesting. It's going to be a fast and furious next couple of weeks here, Matt, with between the CFP, between signing day, between the portal and all the visitors and stuff. We probably I know, I certainly did not expect all this stuff because usually by December, Indiana's football season has been over, is basically over by now, so it's been just all recruiting. So everything going on. It's a fun time. It's a busy time, but I certainly wouldn't trade it for what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, that'll do it for us, folks. Today is Tuesday afternoon, so we will know what Indiana is ranked tonight after you guys probably listen to this podcast. If not, you probably already know by Wednesday. And then selection day is on Sunday, so that will be the final bracket reveal. We'll know where Indiana is going to be playing, who they're going to be playing on Sunday after the conference championship games. And then Matt will have full coverage of National Signing Day tomorrow on Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that. We'll have tons of content from that as well. And then Kurt Signetti, we'll hear from Kurt Signetti on Wednesday after signing day to talk through the 2025 class. And then portal season is about to ramp up here. But that will do it for this week's podcast. We'll see you folks next week. Matt, thanks for joining me as always. You guys can find us all our stuff over on Peegs.com, and we'll talk to you folks next Tuesday.